and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my October wrap-up. To be perfectly honest, I didn't do much reading in October, but that's not exactly a new trend. I managed to finish 2 books and I am like a third of the way through a third one. So the first book I finished was Go Into the Dogs, The Story of a Moralist by Ulrich Kastner. This is a German language book translated by Cyrus Brooks, and it was published, I believe, in 1931, so in the sort of dying days of the Weimar Republic. I think I've spoken about this a couple of times on this channel. I think one was in my autumn TBR with my sister, and then I think I was also currently reading it in September or something. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was an interesting book. There are some problematic parts, like the way a lot of the female characters are written. They are very much not shown in the best of lights, but I guess that was the time period and potentially the sort of popular view of women of the time, which I guess is a bit sad. I don't know whether this is exactly Kastner's thoughts, because obviously just because a writer writes doesn't necessarily mean that that's their opinion. Like, quite often, I mean, it could be that it was a satire of how women are portrayed, but I'm not too sure. I would need to sort of research Ulrich Kastner, the man and writer, rather than just by reading his words. Apart from like that, there's some amusing parts in it, like the way this is written is very witty, and like there's scenes in it that sort of take the piss out of, really. Like there's a shootout between a communist and a Nazi, and one of them gets shot in the bottom, so it's just basically making an arse out of that whole dynamic that was happening at the time, where there were literal street fights between the two opposing political factions. There's also like an eerie passage about war, and that the idea it's on the horizon, but it also potentially was a hark back to World War One, and sort of using that as descriptions. But the fact that war was pretty much on the horizon in 1931, but a lot of people didn't realise it. But yeah, I would totally recommend this if you like German literature, if you are fascinated by the time period. Like, the Weimar Republic was a very, very interesting time. Like, there was a lot of, I don't know, like conflicting things going on. Like, it was the Roaring Twenties for much of it. But then there was also mass unemployment, political upheaval. Then you've got the, there was a faction within Germany trying to rearm and go against the Treaty of Versailles. It's a very, very complex time, and it's quite interesting to read a piece of literature from that time period, basically just in the midst of it all. And this very much feels like a glimpse, a snapshot of time, and you can very much feel that Kastner was in the midst of it all. Like, it feels very real. There's a lot of parallels between him and his protagonist. I would totally recommend it if you're interested in the time period and would like to sort of find out more about it, I guess. The second book I finished was Italo Calvino's Under the Jaguar Sun. This is translated from Italian by William Weather, and it's a collection of 3 short stories, all based around one of our senses. So the first story is about taste, and this is about a couple on an Epicurean journey through Mexico. There's undertones of like cannibalistic rituals in the places that they're visiting, and how this sort of affects them and makes them think towards each other. There's a lot of rich, beautiful descriptions of food in this, which you can obviously expect, as it's about the sense of taste, but it was very evocative. And the second story was about a king who basically is trapped in his kingdom. He overthrew the last king, and now he's like very wary of being betrayed and overthrown himself, so he listens to the sounds of everyone around his throne, essentially. And yeah, it's quite an interesting way to describe like just a lot of sounds. And I think that one was second person, and I don't really like second person narratives. Like, they're interesting, but they're really bizarre to read. Like, I think last year I really enjoyed the book, but I found it so weird reading second person, and that was Open Water by Caleb Azuma Nelson. Like, I thought it was beautifully written, but the second person was so jarring, and I found this exactly the same. It was beautifully written, but I don't think I'm particularly into the whole second person narrative. And then the third story was about a man who encountered a beautiful woman on a masked ball, and he smelt a very beautiful and unique perfume on this woman, and so then he goes to a perfumier to try and unravel who this person could be just by scent alone. And I thought that was rather, like, it's quite a romantic thing, like sort of trying to search for someone through scent alone. Like, ugh. But yeah, that was an interesting one, and it takes a bit of a random turn, I must admit. But the stories are very, very well written. I mean, Italo Calvino just has a way with words. Obviously, I am reading this in English, so it's not in its original Italian, so I can only imagine how beautiful and symphonic the language must be in its original. But yeah, I really enjoyed reading this. It's a very quick read. Like, you could probably sit down and read it in one sitting with a cup of coffee. And if you enjoy very opulent prose, or you're someone that wants to learn how to describe, if you want to become a writer, then I think Italo Calvino is kind of like a master class in description. I kind of knew that from reading Invisible Cities, and this just confirms it. The shame about this is that it would have been 5 stories of the exploration of senses, but Calvino actually died before he could finish it. What else did I read? Oh yeah, I started reading Pet Semetary by Stephen King. I mean, it felt appropriate because it was October and it's like spookiness. But I had some Audible credits to use up, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get a Stephen King, because I've never read any of his work. And I've never really understood the appeal of a horror book, because I don't feel like I would get scared through reading. Like, horror movies are a whole different thing, because you get like the jump scares, and like literally I'm so jumpy when it comes to horror movies. Like, if there's a sudden bang or a sudden thing, I'm like I'm not necessarily scared, but it makes me jump. So I thought I would try out the audiobook. Yeah, so I started listening to Pet Semetary. I think the audiobook I'm listening to is narrated by what's his face? He's an American actor, Michael C. Hall, who played Dexter. I've watched some of the show, but I haven't actually watched the whole thing. But yeah, like, so far he's doing a brilliant job of narration. Naturally, that's why he got hired. But yeah, like, I'm enjoying it. It's a bit weird, but I guess that's what it was supposed to be. I think I've literally read a third-ish of the book on audio, and I've been sort of reading it as I've been like going for walks. Yeah, so I don't really know what to say about Pet Semetary at the moment. Do you want me to say like where I'm up to? Like, the cat's come back, that's what I'm gonna say. And yeah, I'm intrigued to see what happens next. Let's move on to... I watched too many films last month. Most of them are French, because I've set myself... I turned 29 this October, and so I've decided to set myself the challenge of becoming fluent in French before I'm 30. I don't know why this is a challenge, but... So naturally I've brought it upon myself, as my main source of learning at the moment is just to watch movie after movie in the French language. So the first... Oh, actually, like, I did... There was also another weird thing that happened this month. Like, I unintentionally and intentionally watched 4 films involving twins in some capacity. So the first 2 were intentional, because it was like a double bill that I put on for myself. So it was Le Monde Double by Francois Ozon and Dead Ringers by David Cronenberg, because yes, I'm still watching Cronenberg's filmography. Both films are about 2 sets of twins who are like in the medical profession. In Le Monde Double, The twins are psychologists. In Dead Ringers, they are like fertility experts. What happens in the movie's absolutely fucked. Like, it's cursed. But it's David Cronenberg, so of course it was going to be cursed. Yeah, like I've seen Le Bon Double before, and it's a very stylish thriller. And like Francois Ozon is quite a master at cinematography. And because it's all about twins, there's lots of like doubles that you can see throughout the film. Mirrors are reflecting, and just the way some of the shots are, it's a very beautiful film. It's very weird, and it's quite graphic. I really like that movie. And Dead Ringers is also a fucking experience, let me say. Yeah, it's so weird, unsettling, and like Jeremy Irons in it is brilliant, playing like these two sort of opposite roles. So like there's but anyway, they're both like despicable humans. But yeah, it's really interesting. Then the third film about twins, which was completely unintentional, was Personal Shopper. I decided to watch that. It's got Kristen Stewart in it, and it's by Olivier Assayas. I thought it was going to be in French, but then I realised Kristen Stewart was in it, so it's just set in France, but it's in English. And it's about a woman who believes herself to be a medium, and her twin brother has recently passed away, and so she's living in Paris, and she works for a celebrity as personal shopper, and she's refusing to leave this house until her brother has contacted her from the great beyond. It's another stylish thriller. The cinematography is quite great, like the sort of clinical colour palette, like there's a lot of greys, steely blues and things like that. There's like quite a good use of like phone in it, like texting, because there's someone stalking her. Basically, her stalker's texting her, but then she thinks it could be her brother. Is it her brother who's using this to contact her? It's quite a good thriller. But that was the first unintentional twin movie. The second unintentional twin movie was The Double Life of Veronique. I should have kind of known, like, double life, and like the synopsis is, I mean, it's not necessarily like a twin movie, because it's just about two women who look identical. One lives in Poland, one lives in Paris, and they've never met, but they feel this connection spiritually between each other. But yeah, anyway, it's beautiful. But the main thing I noticed about this film is how much of it fucking Amélie stole. Like, Jean-Pierre Jeunet, half of that movie, which I thought was utterly charming when I first watched it, is basically lifted from The Double Life of Veronique, which is by Polish/French director, because he does movies in Polish and French, and obviously this is like very much the Polish/French movie of his filmography. Krzysztof Kieslowski. Kies with a dash above it. Lowski. Kieslowski, but fucking genius, man. But yeah, I was just so surprised how familiar a lot of the scenes felt, and I was like, wow, the colour palette, Amélie. There's a scene where she's on the back of a motorcycle. Amélie. There's a sort of scavenger hunt kind of aspect that Amélie took as well. It's like this puppeteer leaves an audio file for Veronique to find where he is, and so then she discovers like, oh, there's the sound of a train, and then there's like so many footsteps, then a bell rings and things like that, so then she can find out where he is, which is so romantic. But I loved this film so much. I thought it was just so beautiful and very interesting, sort of meditation on life, of fate, of like connections with other people, and yeah, like it was just stunning. But what other movies did I watch? Oh, another French movie, Slalom, which is directed by Charline Favier. Jesus Christ, this was a hard one to watch. It's about a young, like, Olympic skier. You know, like when they do the skiing where they go down the mountain through the flags. I think that's slalom. That's why it's called that. But yeah, it's about a young skier who manages to get into like this academy to train to become an Olympian, and she's really talented. And then there's this older man who is the coach, who was like previously a champion, and then he got injured, so now he's a coach. Yeah, it gets really fucked up. Like, there's sexual assault, manipulation, and it's really kind of horrible to watch. It's very much a #MeToo film, and it's very powerful. It's like a coming of age film as well. There's some beautiful shots of like the Alps, the very isolated sort of feeling of being just surrounded by snow and mountains and just the coldness. There's a metaphor about a wolf in it, and then like obviously the coach is like a wolf in human form. But yeah, it's a really powerful film if if you can handle the themes in it. Oh yeah, she's underage, she's 15, so yeah, it's really horrible. Necessary, but horrible. Loads of other French movies, not really worth talking about, half of them. Decision to Leave. Finally got to see Park Chan-wook's latest movie. Oh my god, it was so good. I knew it was going to be. Like, if there's one director you can trust in to make an amazing film, is Park Chan-wook. It's just beautifully crafted, so twisting and turning, witty. Like, some parts are really, really funny. There's beautiful cinematography. Like, the twisted romance in it is just so compelling. And you can just see how these two characters could slowly fall in love with each other. But essentially the film is about a detective who is investigating a death of a hiker, and then the hiker's wife is then brought in for questioning because she is a suspect. Slowly through their sort of shared time together, they soon form a bond. It's a very enchanting film, and part of that is also down to this recurring song called Mist by Jung Hoon-hee, which Park Chan-wook has actually said in interviews is one of the things that inspired the whole movie. But yeah, so this song plays throughout it, and it becomes a recurring motif through the film. But yeah, like, very, very beautiful, clever, intriguing, owes to several rewatches as well. Like, this film, I feel like I already need to rewatch it just to be delving into that world and sort of unpacking it and see if there's any like hidden clues, or because it's very much like you don't know who to believe in it, like whether you can believe this character, like the female, played to perfection by Tang Wei, who was fabulous in Lust Caution, which another film you have to watch. But yeah, ridiculously brilliant. If you see one movie that I've spoken about in any of my videos all year, you have to see this one. Oh, Antichrist. Oh my god, why did I watch this? I know why I watched it, because it's a Lars von Trier, and the guy's sort of got a reputation for just being shocking and very, I don't know, like quite a bizarre fellow. Jesus Christ, this was a ride. It's got Willem Dafoe in it and Charlotte Gainsbourg, and they play a married couple who basically their child dies and they're grieving, and they go through this grief process by going to a cabin in the woods, and then it just gets really messed up. There's mutilation in this, there is just weirdness, there's like allegory, like they're referred to as she and him. There's a place called Eden that they go to, so there's sort of allegorical sort of religious imagery which von Trier has put into several of his movies, like Nymphomaniac. There's a lot of religious imagery in that. The very epic and obvious house that Jack built that has Virgil from like the Iliad or whatever it is in it. Just losing my voice. But yeah, like, it's Jesus Christ. Don't watch this if you feel sick at like things. Like, it's very hardcore. It's a good movie. It's a bit weird. Like, there is a random talking fox in it. But yeah, fucked up. Very fucked up. The Woman King, which is directed by Gina Prince Bythewood. This tells the story of the Kingdom of Dahomey in Africa, which I think Benin, within present day Benin, that existed approximately 1600 to 1905. 2004. And yeah, so it's set in the kingdom of Dahomey. It is about the Agogier, a group of elite warrior women who are just incredible. Like, the fight scenes in this movie, oh my goodness. Some of the best choreographed fights I've seen on screen in a while. Yeah, it's quite a moving story as well. I didn't think it was going to be as emotional as it was, mainly because of Viola Davis's character has a very painful character arc, and it sort of unravels and becomes more complex as the film goes on, and it's really quite heartbreaking but beautiful as well. And she's just phenomenal as like essentially the general. I think she was the general. It's been a while since I've seen the film, but yeah, like, just breathtaking. But I think like the standout in the movie for me had to be Lashana Lynch. Like, I think she's incredible, and her role was the very sort of friendly, like, she was training the new warriors for the most part, and I just thought she was incredible in that. And yeah, like, it's a very interesting movie. And then the final film I watched this month was All Quiet on the Western Front, directed by Edward Berger. This is a German language movie. It came onto Netflix at the end of the month, and it is based on the book of the same name by Erich Maria Remarque. And it tells the story of a group of young boys, essentially, like I think they're at school, or at the very least at university, who are sort of inspired by a very rousing speech from a professor to forge some documents saying that their parents have signed them to head off into World War One in France. So that it's towards the end of World War One, and join the fight. They arrive, and Jesus Christ, from the beginning it is pretty harrowing how these young hopeful boys are suddenly confronted immediately with the terrors of war. Yikes. But much of the film centres around the relationship between one of the young soldiers and sort of a more experienced soldier called Kat. And he sort of takes this group of boys under his wing and basically just tries to help them survive, because it's very much expected that most of these kids are just going to be cannon fodder and wiped out immediately. And the film explores this very, very beautifully with this scene. From the opening scene, there's a lot of nature shots in this world, which is sublime, but that's for me to talk about later. But like, the first taste of war is essentially a soldier getting killed, and then it shows people taking the uniform, washing it, sewing up patches in it and making it look brand newish, for it then to be handed over to our young protagonist. And then he questions one of the men who gives him the uniform. It's like, oh, this, you must have got this wrong, it belongs to someone, because there's a name tag in it. And they just quickly rip the name tag out, and it just kind of shows you immediately how the uniform, what the uniform stands for, means more than the life that occupies that uniform. That's essentially the film. It's just like one horrible battle after another, and then at the same time it's also about the signing of the Treaty of Versailles and how that came about, how for a lot of people it was a betrayal of their country and honour and things like that. But for the most part, this is really harrowing. Like, there's bodies littering the place. Like, there's a half blown up body in a tree at one point. People get burnt alive. But yeah, like I was saying, with the sublimity of nature and just the juxtaposition between the harrowing nature of war, and then just the beautiful tranquility of nature. And it's kind of just like, nature is there and it's just in the background, just existing, and it will always exist. And then there's the folly of man and the destruction of man, and how at the beginning of the movie it's like peace and quiet, and then it slowly shows you scenes of war, and then at the end of the movie it closes with nature as well. Yes, it's very beautifully shot. Like, at some point there's like a silhouette of light from the rising sun filtering through trees, icy fields. Yeah, like it's very beautiful but very ugly as well. And I think it is a really good anti-war film, because a lot of films, like, you do see the sort of harrowing nature of war, but there's always heroes in it. But maybe that's because this is from the German perspective. There's no winners here. Everyone loses. The fact that in World War One, like, the trench warfare was so ridiculous. Like, for a lot of it, they were just fighting over the same patch of land, and you would advance, and then you'd go back, you'd advance, and you'd go back, and it was just basically people dying over and over and over just to move a few miles, perhaps, forward, but then to lose it, and it's just ridiculous. And yeah, like, I'm definitely a pacifist, and so sometimes, like, I don't watch war films often, but when I heard that it was from the German perspective, I was kind of intrigued, because I did watch a TV show, I think it's like called Generation War or something, which essentially tells the story, I think, of World War II from the German perspective of a group of friends that sign up for the war and basically half of them die. But yeah, it's a hard film to watch, but I think it's an important one. Right, so they were the movies I've watched. Let me just quickly talk about TV shows. 3 main TV shows I'll talk about are all spy dramas, so it was very much a spy fest this month. So I watched Slow Horses, which is on Apple TV Plus, starring Gary Oldman and a few other people. But Gary Oldman's probably like the main cell of the series, because he plays ultimately a boss from hell within MI5, and he is hilarious. Like, the banter, the British wit, like, it's so British it hurts. It's just so funny. But essentially it follows a group of misfits who have sort of, like, basically they've just fucked up in MI5, and now they've been outcast to a house, which they call Slough House for a particular reason. But basically it's where spies go to die, or their careers anyway. So, yeah, a bunch of shit MI5 operatives. I don't know, like, I don't really reveal anything, but yeah, it's basically about inept idiots. But some of them aren't. But yeah, like, and then there's like a kidnapping that happens, and they have to find who kidnapped this young man. But it's very interesting, very, very funny, very much recommend it. Second TV show I watched was Totems, which is a French language TV show. It's set in the 60s, I believe, very much during the space race. It's about a young French physicist who basically has to become a spy and get some codes from a Russian man in Berlin. And yeah, like, it's quite just a complex spy thriller during the Cold War involving space stuff, so it's brilliant. And then the third spy TV show I watched is Cleo, which is on Netflix, and it's about it's Cold War. It's a German language TV show, but this is at the tail end of the Cold War, so it's in 1989, just before the fall of the Berlin Wall. Starts before the Berlin Wall falls, then she gets imprisoned, and then she's released when the Berlin Wall falls. So it's like adjusting from being a Stasi agent to now people are flocking from east to west and west to east. And she basically goes on a mission that she sets herself to find out who betrayed her and locked her up in prison. And yeah, it's batshit crazy. It's very much Killing Eve, but in Germany at the end of the Cold War, essentially. Because, I mean, the character even wears a pink dress at the moment. You just know it's a nod to Killing Eve. But I would say it's like Killing Eve on acid or something. Because it's weird. There's like German techno in it as well, which I love a bit of techno music. There's like a weird raver who's fucking insane. Yeah, it's just batshit crazy, and it's just a lot of fun. And I think there's going to be a season 2, which is cool. But yeah, watch it if you liked Killing Eve, but you kind of got a bit disappointed with it, and you want something a bit weirder. Other TV shows, Babylon Berlin, of course. came back this month, and oh my goodness, this season is so much darker because we're in 1931. The Nazis are very much like bam in your face now. For the past couple of seasons, they've sort of slowly been creeping in, but in season 4 it's just literally Nazis straight up front and centre. Berlin is fucked at this point. Like, the Wall Street crash did F some stuff up, but now it's just crazy. I'm really enjoying it so far. I just love this show. I think it's so well realised. The characters are so enthralling. The drama is so exciting, and just how it interweaves things. It's brilliant. I love it. You should watch it. It's on Now TV or on Sky Atlantic maybe. But I don't have Sky, so I watch it on Now TV. But it's literally one of the best TV shows ever. Anyway, I'm going to leave that here because I've spoken too long about films and TV again. And I'm losing my voice. And the light is slowly fading away. But yeah, thank you for watching. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Let me know in the comment section what you've been reading and watching in October as well. And I will see you again soon. Bye bye.